Have you ever wondered what would happen when the most powerful force in the entire Lion King universe stops answering? Imagine the Pride Lands waking up one morning and the one power that holds Circle of Life vanished without a sound. In today's video, we're going to break down the exact consequences the Pride Lands have never faced before if the roar never returns. Most people think the roar of the elders is just a loud blast of wind, but it's much more than that. The roar is the heart of the Lion Guard that gives them protection, power, and even the right to lead. In the Pride Lands, it's the only power that mixes strength with spirit. When the roar echoes across the savannah, the old lion spirits appear in the clouds, almost like a council watching the moment. It isn't just noise, it's a message from the past saying, "We stand with you." The roar is so strong that it can blast the mountains and push the enemies away. Guard members treat it like a safety rope. They know that when everything falls apart, the roar can turn despair into safety. Even the elders see it as more than power. To them, the roar is the heartbeat of the royal bloodline. But all of this strength depends on one thing, the leader's inner world. The roar only works when the heart behind it is steady. Any tiny cracks or doubts begin to weaken the connection, which turns it unsafe. Predators like hyenas, wolves, and crocodiles notice this. They can smell hesitation before a single sound comes out. It tells enemies something is wrong up there. And once intention slips out of alignment, silence becomes a real possibility. So the roar becomes a mirror. It reflects the leader's inner truth more clearly than any advisor ever could. If the leader carries offense, the roar hesitates, almost like it doesn't trust the motive. But when the leader is clear and calm, the roar lands with clean, sharp force. It shows exactly where the leader stands inside. This is why the Bible says the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. The Pride Lands listen to the tone of the roar more than the words of the leader. And that truth leads us straight into something more shocking. Because if the roar mirrors the leader so closely, what happens when the roar stops responding at all? When the roar finally goes silent, it means something inside the leader has drifted so far that the spirits can't stand behind it anymore. The silence is not the result of a single moment of anger. It's the slow buildup of emotional cracks that the leader never repaired. The roar responds to the heart, and the silence is the clearest sign that the heart is no longer aligned with duty. That's where the story flips on its head. Animals in the Pride Lands feel the shift before the leader even notices it. The air feels like the savannah is holding its breath. The guard looks to the sky for the ancestors, but nothing appears. No spirits, no glow, even no pressure in the air. The team loses the comfort they always had. That's when things start to break fast. Once the ecosystem depends on the roar more than anyone else, it suddenly collapses. Because the moment the roar goes quiet, predators like hyenas, crocodiles, and others start chasing boundaries they never touched before. They start whispering among themselves, planning attacks. Allies begin soft talks behind the scenes, creating backup plans in case the leader can't recover. They know that silence means something big is broken. The guard feels the weight of it instantly. They double their patrols just to keep things steady, but fear spreads its way right into something you could imagine. The moment the roar goes silent, the kingdom starts to wonder if the leader is still chosen. And in the Pride Lands, the roar is actually the monarchy's stamp of approval from the ancestors. Without it, the throne feels like it's missing its foundation. The elders try to calm the herds and the younger lions, but their voices sound thin, like wind passing through dry grass. Inside Pride Rock, meetings grow tense. Every council member asks the same question. Why did the ancestors go quiet? No one has an answer. And the silence hanging in the chamber feels like its own rising storm. Other prides watch this play from the shadows. The political mood inside the Pride Lands changes overnight. Loyalty turns into backup strategies. Even trusted allies begin making lists of what to do just in case. To guard, without the spirits glowing in the sky behind them, negotiations hit harder, and nearby territories take advantage of it. They start saying, maybe the circle of life doesn't revolve around Pride Rock anymore. That doubt becomes a spark for something worse, because once the political ground shakes, enemies see their chance. The silence of the roar becomes their green light. Villains begin pushing a message that cuts straight to the heart. Hyenas test borderlines at the same time, and crocodiles start talking among themselves. The ancestors left your king. Follow us instead. Conflicts start piling up everywhere. A fight in the east breaks the boundary in the west. The leader gets pulled in all directions, with no roar to reset the balance, and that pressure becomes the real question they can't avoid any longer. Once the silence settles in, most leaders make the same mistake. They try to force the roar back. They push their voice and power, hoping the ancestors will answer again. But the roar doesn't work like that. Every time the leader tries to force it, the silence grows even deeper. When the leader gets upset, the spiritual grip tightens. It's almost like the ancestors are whispering, "Not like this." The guard watches the leader closely and gets worried because every failed attempt becomes a sign that something is slipping. The pride sees it too. They study every attempt to earn it back with big displays or dramatic roars. But it looks desperate, and desperation has never brought the roar back. Because restoration doesn't begin with a louder effort, it begins with honesty. The leader has to say he messed up and mean it. They need to rebuild trust inside the guard, showing they can listen and lead without hiding. At this stage, understanding why the silence happened becomes more important than the silence itself. That's when things start to shift. The roar returns in tiny moments with a small wind pulse during a patrol and a faint hint of the ancestral echo in the sky. It's quiet at first, but it's real. And that small spark leads us into the final lesson the roar has been trying to teach all along. Even after the leader begins to heal, there's still one hard truth they have to face. The roar's return is never promised, and that's because the silence was never about losing power, it was about worthiness. The ancestors don't judge muscles or battle skills, they judge intention. Silence is their way of asking, "Are you still the leader you claimed you were?" This question cuts deeper than any sword, because leaders who rely on the roar to dominate others are the first ones to lose it. In the Pride Lands, even if no one says it out loud, the land itself leans toward leaders who act from duty. The roar tests something simple but powerful. Can the leader guide the Pride Lands when the sky isn't glowing? Can they stay steady even when everything feels broken? And this is where everything shifts. Humility becomes the key. The leader has to strip away pride, fear, and pressure and go back to the real reason they were chosen in the first place. Only then does the truth rise to the surface, and that truth leads us to the final revelation. The roar is not the end of everything. It's the ancestors testing whether the leader still deserves it and whether their heart is aligned with protection over power. When the leader passes that test, everything changes. They rise stronger than before because they had to lead without their biggest weapon. They had to act from wisdom. The ancestors only bring the roar back when the leader proves integrity under pressure. The Pride Lands gain a leader who is battle-tested in spirit. Enemies lose their advantage because the roar comes back cleaner, sharper, and more aligned than ever. The guard's confidence grows again because their leader is rooted in truth. Honestly, balance returns through character, and the roar becomes what it was always meant to be, a symbol of worthiness, not a tool of domination. If the roar of the elders ever went silent, it would be a crack in the foundation of everything the Pride Lands believes, the leadership, legacy, and the balance that holds this world together. And when that accountability disappears, the Pride Lands are forced to face a harder question. Who actually deserves to carry a power the sky itself once trusted? So, here's the thought I'll leave you with. If the roar went silent tomorrow, should the Pride Lands fight to restore it or learn to stand without it? Put your thoughts in the comments.